right, guys, our favorite time of the week when we get to answer a few of your questions. Saagar, what is up first?
Number 1 from Brandon Murdoch, a liberal need to be authoritarian. Hey guys, you've been talking about how liberals have downright started to become authoritarian and wanting to refuse medical care for the unvaxxed and such. My question to you, how do you think that we show this generation an eye for an eye makes the whole world blind? Great Gandhi quote. Thank you guys. I love the show so much. What do you think, Krystal?
Well, I mean, I think the best way to do it is what we try to do here, which is to point out that, you know, things like censorship, you may feel like your side, whatever that is safe. But there are plenty of examples all across the ideological map of where this really comes into play. And in fact, if you look throughout history, because the left, you know, is oriented around sort of challenging institutions of power, those sorts of authoritarian tactics have been used way more often historically against the left than they have against conservatives. So I think you can educate through history, but there are also plenty of contemporary examples here that show that, look, this is a bad direction to go in. The last thing I want to say is Thomas Frank, I mentioned this before, but Thomas Frank had a really good piece on this recently. And basically what's happened here is a lot of liberals have sort of given up on America. They no longer believe in like winning the argument. They don't think minds can be changed. They think there are a lot of people who are inherently bad or evil or deplorable or whatever it is. And by the way, I think there's plenty of this going on the right as well. I don't think this is just happening among liberals, and that piece tends to not get talked about as much. But you know, so the instinct when you say, "Hey, we got all these people here who are just completely irredeemable. There's nothing we can do with them," then that naturally leads to a place of like, we need a police state, we need a crackdown, we need to just push these ideas or these individuals out of the public square. And, you know, that's the beginning of the end in terms of having an actual democracy where you want to hear from other people and where you believe in a common project that we're all even in together.
Yeah. Go ahead and do the next question because my answer directly relates to it.
Okay. From Samuel Hooper. How can ordinary people fight the war against the culture war? I've felt for a long time the culture war is the biggest threat to our country and democracy in general, which is why I was so happy to find your show. Thank you. How can ordinary people best participate in the effort to, quote, make people hate each other less and hate the corrupt ruling class more, other than by subscribing to content like Breaking Points, which is, of course, a great way to fight against the culture war?
Of course, it's a great way. What I would tell you is to go and to seek out people who you actively disagree with and do not get hot whenever you're arguing. Explain from a very basic level why you think what you think. And in almost 99% of cases, it will go very differently than the shouting match that you guys see online and in general from maybe how you might think. Even the most authoritarian, shout-downy liberals, if you sit down and you just be like, look, this is where I come from and this is what I think, they're not going to shout you down in person. That's the biggest mistake. Maybe some, you know, on the worst college campus, but in general, and the same thing. By the way, I come from red hot, white evangelical America. And even there, you sit and you be like, hey, I'm an Indian immigrant. Here's what we think. It's a little bit different. People are like, hey, that's an interesting point of view. That's all it really takes. And so I know that's like a hokey answer, but that's my answer to the previous one too, which is that, look, the more that we divide, especially in terms of the way we live, in terms of the media we watch and more, we're just not going to have any common frame of reference. And the only way that you combat that is to actually actively go out and seek it. That's not a societal level solution, but it is something.
Yes. And those little actions can add up. You have to do it like actually in real life. And it's such a different dynamic than online because you even see like the most, you know, opinionated, aggressive YouTubers. They'll be spatting at each other through separate videos or through like some Twitter beef. And then they'll be like, debate me, bro. And then they get onto their like streams together and they're like, well, that was a lovely conversation. Yeah, I really respect your point of view. And you're like, yeah, I thought so.
Of course. You know, it's like, come on. Whatever. Spare us all the theater. All right. Third question. Marshall Chason. I hope I said that right. Beau Biden effect. Was Joe Biden finally able to withdraw the troops from Afghanistan thanks in part to his son's military experience? Maybe finally having a president with adjacent modern military exposure was a good thing. Very simple. I agree. I think that definitely was part of it.
Yeah, I think that was a factor for sure, because then it's just not, you know, so many of these bloviators on TV or whatever, they don't they never served. They don't have family members who served. It's not real to them. It's all just a game. So I think that was one of a lot of different factors that went into actually holding strong and doing the thing that the American people sent him there to do.
That's right. All right. Next question.
Next up, Mike Sheehan. Mainstream news coverage of Afghanistan pullout during a recent broadcast. You guys suggested the news agencies benefit from an ongoing military engagement in Afghanistan. Please explain what is the relationship between the military-industrial complex and mainstream news. Go ahead, Saagar.
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting point. And look, I'm not saying that they directly profit from it, like in terms of exchange of dollars, but they do profit from getting people ginned up, from making and manufacturing crises. But more importantly, this is where their ideology also pairs very well with their desire for ratings, which is what somebody once told me in the news business. It's all about live pictures. They like harrowing live photos from Kabul. That's good for business. Then they can talk about it endlessly because their job is to fill airtime in between actual news organizations. That is or actual news presentations. So this is the thing. They need to have advertisements, and the stuff in between is basically all just filler. That's why they do directly benefit from a lot of the chaos, why they push things in that direction, and why alternative viewpoints like, hey, actually, it's actually going pretty well, will never be aired on cable.
Yeah, and I think there's two other factors as well. So number one, they really reflect this elite consensus, which just is genuinely military industrial complex friendly, in part because so many people in our elite class here in Washington do directly profit. And so not only are they impacted by those views, which are ever present around them in their social circles, but they also depend on access to, those various elites in order to break their stories, which are basically just like, being stenographers for the deep state. But they need that access. That's how they're sadly rewarded in their careers oftentimes. I think there's another, for the real journalists who are either on the ground in Kabul or have sources there, I do think that there is a genuine, they have a personal connect to people who are the relative elites in Afghanistan, who live in the city, who are enduring this right now. And so I do think there's a natural, human impulse and instinct to be really emotionally moved and persuaded by those individual stories, which truly are heartbreaking. But if you're really being a journalist, you have to try to separate that emotional response from the actual facts and reality. And in this instance, I just don't think that they've been able to do that. The last thing I'll say here is the perspective that you get of the Afghan people is almost exclusively limited to the people who are in Kabul. So there's point. So true. And that was why I really like talking to Lucas Kuntz, because he actually, he spoke the language. He was in the countryside. And this is a very rural country, by the way. I mean, overwhelmingly, it is a rural nation. So if you actually want to understand the perspective of the people, how they're viewing all of this, you have to get out into the countryside. Well, that's very difficult and dangerous to do. So that perspective of the Afghan people is also almost completely absent from the mainstream media. I think that's an important note as well.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, final question here from Jess Pellini. Hi, Krystal and Saagar. My fiance, Vince, and I are huge fans of Breaking Points. Rather than ask a question, I would love to surprise him with a shout out from the two of you for our wedding this weekend. We've been engaged since 2019. This is our long-awaited, delayed celebration. Thanks and God bless.
Oh, that is amazing. Congratulations, Jess and Vince. Hope that your weekend wedding is beautiful, long awaited. I'm sure it was worth the wait. And may you have a beautiful life together.
That's right. We love you, Jess and Vince. We're so happy for you. I'm sorry that you had to wait so long. I hope you guys have just an amazing weekend. Just enjoy the hell out of it with your friends, family, all of that. And I just hope that you guys have a great life together.
Absolutely. All right. We love Jess and Vince, and we love all of you guys. Thank you for helping us do this thing. You guys are the bedrock that makes this show possible, and we couldn't possibly thank you enough.
That's right. All right. We'll see you guys next week.